This is number seven podcast.
Number 7 podcast.
Hey bookworms, welcome back to the number 7 podcast channel. Today we're going to be looking at Iron Flame. You know, that fiery sequel to Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Now, if you haven't read Fourth Wing yet, be warned, there are spoilers ahead. So let's jump right in. Iron Flame picks up right where Fourth Wing left off, with Violet and Xaden escorting a young dragon, Andarna, to safety. And you'll remember Andarna imprinted on Dane. Unfortunately, didn't make it. Chapters 3 and 4, kind of like a high-stakes road trip. But with a dragon, they're racing against time, trying to avoid enemy detection. And dealing with Andarna, who, let's just say, is a bit of a handful. Violet and Xaden's relationship is still a secret, and you can really feel that tension as they navigate their feelings for each other while they're trying to keep things under wraps. It's like they're walking on a tightrope, and one wrong step could send everything crashing down. Back at the Rider's Quadrant, Violet starts her second year of training, and the dragon choosing ceremony in Chapter 7 is like this brutal reminder of just how dangerous this world is. First years are paired with dragons, and it's chaotic, it's terrifying. Some cadets even lose their lives. Violet herself, she barely survives a dragon attack, and the emotional scars, they're just as deep as the physical ones. This ceremony really sets the stage for the rest of the book, highlighting that constant threat of death that these riders face. And then in Chapter 14, things get even more complicated. Violet discovers that the weapons they use against the enemy, called Venin, are made from the same material that powers the wards, protecting their kingdom. Talk about a moral dilemma. It's like finding out that the very thing keeping you safe is also being used to fuel the war. The plot thickens in Chapters 20 and 22. As Violet grapples with the secret she's keeping, she's hiding her relationship with Xaden, and the weight of that secret is starting to crush her. The book explores this idea of selective truth-telling, and it really makes you think about the lines we draw when it comes to honesty and loyalty. We get a closer look at Violet's signet powers in Chapters 27 and 28. Remember, a signet is this rare ability that allows a rider to extend the protective wards around their kingdom. Violet is pushing the limits of her abilities during training, but she faces this harsh punishment from this particularly cruel instructor, Varish. This guy is like the embodiment of everything that's wrong. With the Rider's Quadrant, he's ruthless, power-hungry, and just seems to enjoy making life miserable for Violet. It's clear that she's going to have to overcome some serious obstacles if she wants to survive in this world. Violet's quest for knowledge continues in Chapters 32 and 34. As she investigates the history of the wards, she's trying to learn everything she can about their creation and the legendary First Six who established them. It's like she's piecing together a puzzle, and each new piece brings her closer to understanding the true nature of her powers. Hold on tight, because in Chapters 38 and 39, we get a bombshell revelation. The enemy they've been fighting, the Venin, are actually wyvern, dragon-like creatures, controlled by these mysterious dark wielders. It's a complete game changer. Suddenly, everything Violet thought she knew about the war is called into question. Chapter 42 is an adrenaline-fueled roller coaster ride, as Violet and her allies confront a powerful dark wielder. This showdown is intense, showcasing Violet's resourcefulness and combat skills. She's not just a rider anymore. She's becoming a true warrior. The story takes a dark turn in Chapters 47 and 48, when Violet is captured and tortured by Varish. He's determined to get information about the rebellion against Navarre, and he's not afraid to use brutal tactics. These chapters are tough to read, but they reveal Violet's incredible strength and resilience, even in the face of unimaginable pain. She refuses to break. And just when you think things can't get any worse, Xaden reveals a secret of his own in Chapter 54. He's an Intrigue, which means he can read minds. This revelation adds a whole new layer of complexity to their relationship. Can Violet trust Xaden knowing he can hear her thoughts? Can he truly love her if he can manipulate her mind? It's a question that will haunt them both as the story unfolds. And speaking of secrets, Chapter 58 reveals the true nature of the enemy's attacks. It wasn't the Devarian capital they were after, but the dragon hatching grounds. This discovery raises the stakes to a whole new level. If the enemy manages to control the next generation of dragons, Navarre will be doomed. The climax of Part 1 arrives in Chapter 62, with an epic battle at the hatching grounds. Violet's bravery and strategic thinking are on full display as she fights alongside her fellow riders to protect the future of their kingdom. She even unleashes her lightning-wielding abilities, which are both terrifying and awe-inspiring. But that's just the beginning. We'll dive deeper into the twists and turns of Iron Flame in Part 2, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the number 7 podcast. So let's pick up the story with Violet and Agast, trying to, process everything that happened. During that intense battle at the hatching grounds in Chapter 54, the fallout from Xaden's bombshell revelation. It's still rippling through their relation. Remember, Violet just discovered he can read minds, and she's not handling it well at all. She feels betrayed, vulnerable, and like their whole relationship has been based on a lie. Agnes tries to explain that. He made a deal with her mother to keep her safe during her first year at the Writer's Quadrant. But he insists he started falling for her long before that. He loves her for who she is, not because of any deal or because he can read her mind. But Violet's trust is shattered, and it's going to take a lot to rebuild it. Meanwhile, Taryn finally spills the beans about why Andarna has been sleeping for so long. He reveals that a dragon's second bond, like the one Andarna formed with Dane, is much riskier than the first. There's a chance the dragon could die, and he didn't want to worry Violet. This revelation kind of underscores that theme of protection and the lengths these characters will go to keep each other safe. But it also raises questions about the ethics of withholding information, even if it's done with good intentions. Things take a dramatic turn in Chapter 58, as a series of attacks on the outposts ramp up the tension at the Writer's Quadrant. During a training exercise, Violet's signet powers go haywire, and she accidentally creates this massive ward. It's a powerful display of her abilities, but it also attracts some unwanted attention. Later that night, Violet and Ghazan have a heart-to-heart conversation, but the air is thick with unspoken doubts. She's still struggling to come to terms with his mind-reading abilities and her own growing powers. She feels exposed, vulnerable, and terrified of getting hurt. Ghazan tries to reassure her, but the damage is done. They both need time and space to process their emotions and figure out where their relationship goes from here. In Chapter 62, the truth about the attacks on the outposts is revealed. They were a strategic diversion to weaken the wards protecting Navarre. The enemy is planning a full-scale invasion, and the stakes are higher than ever. Violet and her allies are thrust into this high-pressure game of strategy, trying to anticipate the enemy's moves and protect the heart of their kingdom. They have to put their personal struggles aside and focus on the bigger picture, which is no easy feat. The weight of responsibility and the trauma of her capture are taking a toll on Violet. She's haunted by nightmares of the sage's torture, and the fear is like this constant shadow. But she's determined to stay strong, not just for herself, but for her friends, her dragon, and the fate of Navarre. Chapter 63 delves into the complicated relationship between Violet and her mother. Remember, Violet discovered that there's more than one wardstone, and the knowledge of how to create them has been intentionally kept secret. She confronts her mother, General Sorrengail, about this. And their clash highlights that generational divide and the contrasting views on leadership and knowledge. General Sorrengail believes secrecy is necessary to protect Navarre, while Violet argues for transparency and collaboration. This disagreement creates a rift between them, straining their already complex relationship. It raises questions about the ethics of leadership, the balance of power, and the right to information. As the threat of invasion looms, a glimmer of hope emerges in Chapter 65, and Darnadine's dragon finally wakes from her long sleep. But there's a bittersweet twist. One of her wings is damaged, limiting her ability to fly. This symbolizes the lasting impact of loss and the resilience needed to adapt to challenging circumstances. And Darna's recovery parallels Violet's own journey of healing and growth. The enemy strikes in Chapter 66, launching a surprise attack on Basquiat, the heart of Navarre, and the dragon hatching grounds are their target. It's an all-out war, and Violet finds herself at the forefront, pushing her lightning-wielding powers to their limits. She fights with fierce determination, taking down multiple wyvern and facing off against a dark wielder. But they're outnumbered, and the situation is desperate. In a stunning betrayal, Violet's mother reveals her true intentions. She plans to evacuate the hatchlings and abandon Navarre. General Sorrengail believes sacrificing Basquiat is the only way to save their people's future. But Violet is devastated. This betrayal shatters any remaining trust between them, and it throws Violet's world into chaos. She's forced to confront the harsh realities of war, the compromises leaders sometimes make, and the weight of making life or death decisions. But Violet refuses to give up on her home. She rallies her allies, Zayden, her brother Brennan, and even her sister Mara, who had been fighting for the enemy, and together they make a desperate stand against the invaders. It's a powerful moment of unity and defiance. In the face of overwhelming odds, the battle in Chapter 67 is brutal and chaotic, pushing Violet to her physical and emotional limits. She sustains injuries that even Nolan the healer struggles to mend, but her love for Sigyn, her loyalty to Navarre, and her fierce determination keep her fighting. In a desperate gamble, Violet realizes she can use her lightning-wielding abilities to activate the wardstone. It's a risky move that could kill her, but she's willing to sacrifice everything to save her people. With the help of her friends and her dragon, she channels all her power into the wardstone. The wards surrounding Basquiat come roaring to life, repelling the enemy and securing a hard-won victory. The battle is over, but the war is far from won. Violet knows the enemy will return, and she's determined to be ready. But she also needs to confront her mother's betrayal, come to terms with the secrets Xaden has been keeping, and most importantly, heal from the trauma she's endured. Iron Flame doesn't shy away from the costs of war, the complexities of relationships, and the sacrifices demanded of those who fight for what they believe in. Welcome back to the Number 7 podcast. So we left off with Violet reeling from, the aftermath of that intense battle and her mother's shocking betrayal. Talk about a rough week. But Violet, she isn't one to wallow in self-pity. Even though she's physically and emotionally exhausted, she knows she needs to figure out what the enemy's up to and how to protect Navarre from their next attack. And while she's dealing with all that, she stumbles upon another game changer. Remember those ancient journals about the wards that she's been studying, where she finally cracks the code? But what she discovers isn't good news. It turns out the wards are dying, and the enemy knows it. The weight of the entire kingdom's fate rests on her shoulders. She has to find a way to fix the wards, and fast. But how can she possibly do that when she's still struggling to control her own powers? It's a race against time. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Luckily, Violet has an amazing support system. Jerviden, even though their relationship is strained, is still there for her, and her friends are rallying around her. They're a tight-knit group, and they're ready to face whatever comes next. Together, they make a formidable team. Chapter 64 opens with the morning after the battle, and everybody is running on adrenaline and exhaustion. I mean, they've survived against impossible odds. But the war is far from over. Violet knows they need to figure out the enemy's next move, and she has a gut feeling it's going to be even more dangerous than the attack on Basquiath. Meeting with the leaders of the rebellion, including her brother Brennan and General Melgren, they try to piece together what happened. They soon realize the enemy used a diversion tactic, attacking Samara to draw their attention away from their true target, Basquiath. And it worked. The leaders are furious that they were tricked, but Violet is more concerned about why the enemy targeted the hatching grounds. What was so important about those dragon eggs? Violet's intuition tells her something's off. She starts digging deeper. She uncovers a horrifying possibility. The enemy is trying to create their own army of dragons. They want to control the power of the ancients. And they're not afraid to go to any lengths to achieve their goal. The stakes have reached a whole new level of terrifying. If the enemy succeeds in creating their own dragon army, Navarre and maybe the whole continent will be doomed. Violet knows she has to stop them, but time is running out, and the wars are weakening every day. In Chapter 65, Violet's determination is blazing. She refuses to let fear paralyze her. She throws herself into training, pushing herself beyond her limits to master her lightning-wielding abilities. She's not just a rider anymore. She's becoming a force of nature. And as she trains, she delves deeper into the history of the wards and the ancient dragons who created them. She discovers a connection between her signet powers and the power of the ancients, and she starts to understand her true potential. But just as Violet is getting stronger, the enemy is closing in. They attack the outposts, testing the ward's strength, making it clear that another major assault is imminent. The tension is building, and you can feel the storm brewing. And then in the final chapter 67, everything explodes. The enemy launches a massive attack on Navarre, targeting the weakened wards, and Violet and her allies stand as the last line of defense. It's a fight for survival, for freedom, for the very soul of Navarre. The battle is breathtakingly epic. Dragons clash in the sky, riders fight on the ground, and Violet's lightning sets the battlefield ablaze. She's pushing her powers to the absolute limit, taking down Wyvern and holding her own against the terrifying dark wielders. But even with her incredible abilities, they're facing overwhelming odds. Just when hope seems to dwindle, Violet remembers something her friend Mira told her. There's a way to fix the wards, a way to make them stronger than ever before, but it's dangerous. And it requires a sacrifice. Without hesitation, Violet makes the ultimate sacrifice, giving up a part of herself to save her people, her kingdom, and the dragon she loves. It's a selfless act of courage and love, a defining moment that shows her true strength. The wards surge with renewed power, repelling the enemy, and Navarre is saved. But the victory comes at a price. Violet is changed, forever marked with the power she unleashed. She's more powerful than ever, but she's lost something precious in the process. And as the dust settles, Violet knows the war is far from over. The enemy will be back, but she'll be ready for them. Now she's fighting for more than just Navarre. She's fighting for the future of all dragonkind. So there you have it, Dragon Riders. That's our deep dive into Iron Flame. Hope you enjoyed the ride. This book is a wild roller coaster of emotions, a testament to the power of courage, love, and sacrifice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Number 7 podcast channel for more epic adventures. And if you have any other books you'd like us to summarize, let us know in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in.